Earlier on, John Ansell spoke about the neo-Maori and the differences that they have to in terms of the older Maori. So what's been the response like from the neo-Maori to your work?
Right. Yeah, I really got on well with the older Maori. Way back in the 60s, and I went overseas in the 60s and came back in the 70s. But I used to live in those communities where a lot of the older women spoke no English at all. They had the mokos and that, and they tell you the stories, and they'd share everything. But then I noticed after I came back overseas that a lot of that history was starting to disappear. The history that I've been raised with, but seemingly taboo. You didn't talk about it anymore. And I kept waiting for the academics to come and rectify and correct the situation, but they never did. So I had an opportunity at a certain point to start investigating myself, and started looking at some of the anomalous structures and slowly piecing it all together, and I let the sites themselves teach me what was there. I didn't worry too much about reading some academics' misconceptions. I just measured the sites, and slowly by comparative analysis started to work out what they were doing, because tradesmen had put those sites in place, and you go in there looking at it as a tradesman and working it out logically. Why did they do this? Yeah.
A lot of Māori would feel concerned about what you're doing, because in essence, like I said earlier, what you're doing is gathering evidence that Māori weren't the first to settle in New Zealand.
But is that really a problem? History has got to be warts and all. You don't tailor history or reinvent history to suit political expediency. It's got to be your real history, and it's spoken of all through Maori oral traditions. So why not embrace it? Why not celebrate it? Why not go to these wonderful sites and have a picnic? See the marvellous views from them, just like they do in Britain. Whole families will, right, we're going out to the Stones today, so they go as a family and climb the hill and have a wonderful day out in nature, just loving the old sites. And you still have many remnants of those people in New Zealand today, and they need to celebrate their ancestry, their very long enduring whakapapas that go back multiple generations.
Okay, so you're talking about Pākehā whakapapa, is that right?
I'm talking about Ngāti Hautu, Waitaha, Moriori, although there aren't a lot of them left. And just the general long-term history of the country. There's so much that these anomalous structures can teach us, and we're just missing out on this very rich ancient history. New Zealand wasn't some kind of a backwater that was discovered, a few hundred years ago. It's incredibly old. It's been occupied for thousands of years.
So how would you describe the people who support your work here? Your name has been linked to people like John Ansell, who's had a reputation for being anti-Māori, with Alan Titford, somewhere in the mix there, and I've seen it on a couple of the blogs, a link to Kerry Bolton.
Yeah.
All sorts of people who kind of view this as, I guess extra reason to debate, about Māori indigeneity.
Right, well, a lot of these people are getting demonised. I get demonised. I wrote a purely archaeological article, at least helped with one for eLocal, and all of a sudden I'm a Nazi. There seems to be this preoccupation with putting a title on you, putting a name to you. How dare you say that? That makes you a Nazi, a Maori basher or whatever. No, I'm saying only what the Komatuas and the Tohungas said. I'm quoting them. I've met Kerry Bolton. He's a very nice guy, very normal, over his life. In his life, he's experimented with a few things and that, but he's a great scholar. John, I don't see as a very radical individual. They just question what we're being fed. I worked at a university in disability services where I had to write for disabled students. Some of them had hearing problems, sight problems, dyslexia, all these sorts of things. So I had to attend many lectures. I think I did a count up fairly recently. I might have done about 4,000 lectures where I took notes. And I heard unbelievable dribble in some of those classes. I only ever heard half the story. And I thought, well, what about the other half? And academia kind of, it'll just tell you, spoon feed you what they want to know. Yeah.
So how do you think your work will affect the place of Māori in New Zealand, if it becomes widely accepted and acknowledged?
Well, it should be widely accepted and acknowledged because that's the way it was when I was a child. All of our history books were replete with these references. The knowledge has come from Maori themselves, but then it got suppressed. It became politically incorrect to mention it or something, and I don't want to see it lost. One thing that I really worry about is when I was very young, there were many komatuas, and they had the old method of taking the brightest and the best of the children aside and training them up. And then later on, we seemed to go into a stage where these usurpers would come in and displace that system, and I call them like corporate komatuas, not the real komatuas who have come through the whare wānanga and really learned over years the oral histories and everything. And I'm just, I'm in despair that knowledge, so much of that knowledge is going to be lost. I would really like to see, the old system returned, the old komatua system, if you like. Yeah.